Hello everyone and welcome to Tech with Robert, the Get Started with T-SQL course. In this lecture we're going to talk about how to combine query results with union and union all. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give a thumbs up on the video if you like what I do. Without further ado, let's dive right in. And so, when we write a SQL query, the result is referred to as a set. And you write your select statement, you do your joins and to all the tables that you need to select columns from, and the results, you get a query result and it's called a set. But sometimes you need to combine multiple sets into one set. And so I think of this example. Say that you have 3 different tables containing sales. So you would have, for example, sales 2021, which stored some information, some sales information from 2021, and then you had another table called sales 2022, and sales 2023, and so on. And you got a request from the sales department to say, oh, we need to create a report in Excel, and we need to query all of our sales tables. And so instead of just importing 3 sales tables separately, you would want to create a single query where you combine all of these 3 tables together and name it maybe total sales or whatever. And so that is where the union and the union all clauses come into play. And so I'm going to show you some examples on the union and union all, but just a quick description of what the difference is between union and union all. So the union, it's going to take the distinct values from each set to avoid duplicates. So if you would have, for example, you had 2 different customer tables and you saw that you have the same customer stored in both tables, then when you do a union between these 2 tables, you would only get that customer with, let's say, customer ID 1, for example. You would only get that customer and his information once. Whereas in some cases you want to get everything from each set, and you don't care if that value already exists in another set. So you still, if you have 5 rows in this set and you have 5 rows in the other set, you want 10 rows in the final set regardless. That is where you use the union all. So union all ignores duplicates. You will get everything regardless. And there are some rules when you work with union. So for example, you have to have the same number of columns. So if you select 4 columns from a table and that is one set, you also need to have 4 columns in this other set that you do a union to. Otherwise you're going to get an error, which I'm going to show you in a very brief moment. Another rule is that the values in all of these combined columns must have similar data types. So SQL Server will do its best to make the conversions, but some will not work. And so let's say that you have a column, okay? You select the column A, and the data type is a n varchar with the values of 2022, for example, as a string. And then when you say select column A from the other table that you are performing a union on, you have the value 10 as a integer, as a number, not as a string. SQL Server will be able to handle this because it can convert 2022 to a number. But what if you had 2023 ABC and then you would try to add 10 as an integer? That would not work because SQL Server cannot convert 2023 ABC to a number. And I'm going to show you all of these errors and how you can address them. So let's jump over to SQL. I have some data here that I'm going to I'm going to put this in the description if you want to follow along, but I have basically created 3 tables here. So sales table 2021, sales 22, and 23. And so if we just take a look at, we select star from sales 2021, okay? And so you see we have the sales ID, we have the sales date, and the sales amount. And then our boss asks us to say, oh, we need to add all of those. We need a table where we have all of our sales, because we're going to create a report in Excel to our shareholders or whatever, right? And then you see that, okay, but we have another table here called sales 22, and then select star from, and also you have sales 2023. And so as we can see here, they are similar fields, although in the first table the name of the sales date is SalesDate, the other one is SalesOrderDate, and here is SalesDateOrdered. And so we see we have 4 transactions in each table, so but we want to produce a final table, a one query with, in this case, 12 rows, and we don't want to import all of these rows and all of these tables, one by one. And so what we could do is we could start off by combining the set A, which is this, because the result here, this is called a set. So this is, we can call this set A, and this is another set here, so we can call it set B. So what we could write is, we want to select, you can say select the sales ID, the sales date, and the sales amount from sales 2021, and we could say union. Okay, we write union, and then we write the exact same thing, but from the 22 instead. And here we need to change this to sales order date. And so a couple of things to notice here. If we now run this query, we see now that we have one query result with 7 rows. Okay, and so what happened here? We said that in this table here we have 4 transactions, and in this table we have 4 transactions. So 4 plus 4 should be equal to 8, not 7. So why do we only get 7 rows here? If we do this like this instead, if we run these 2 queries at the same time, I'm going to show you. So you see, when we run in the sales 2021 table, we have a duplicate row here. So we have sales ID 101 with the same values here, but since we did a union, we only took the distinct values. So it noticed that, okay, here we have a duplicate, and so we're only going to take that row once. So that means that we only got 3 rows from the same query, from the first query here. So that is what I meant when I showed you here that is a difference between the union and the union all. And so if you wanted to get all of the rows here, whether it's a duplicate or not, we would have to write union all. And so now when we run this, we see that we will get 8 transactions. So we will get those 2 rows here, even though it's a duplicate. So that is something that you need to be aware of when you're working with the union and union all. You sort of need to understand the behavior between these two, because otherwise you can run into some annoying and some bugs that you don't understand. You see, oh, but why don't I get all the data? And so you need to understand that the union takes the distinct values, and if you want all of the rows, regardless whether there's a duplicate or not, use union all. Another thing I want you to notice here is that we named this, we have the sales ID, and then we have sales date. So the date field in the first query here is called sales date, but the sales date column in the other table here is called sales order date. So why does the result here say sales date? And so it's going to take the name of the first query, the first set. So if you have 5 sets, you name the fields what you want the output results to be in the set A here. So if I were to say, for example, let's say that I want to rename this. So I want to rename this, and I'm going to say final date column name. Okay, so I want it to be final date column name. But when I run this query, you see that the name of the sales date column is still sales date, is because even though I added an alias here, but if I switch places here and I change it to this instead, sales date. So here, then the name of the field is going to be final date column name here. So we set the name of all of the names that we want as the output on our columns. We set those in the first query in our union or union all clause. And so watch what happens if let's say that we had from that sales 2021 table, we had a 4th column where it's called sales, it's called transaction type source. So we could say that this is, let's say, from the store. And so we say store. I will name it transaction type. And so when we run this first query here, we specify that all of these transactions occurred in our store, because let's say we have both we could have our transactions in the store and then, and on the website, for example. And so this is, we say store here as a transaction type. And when we try to run this query now, look what's going to happen. Here we have 4 columns, and we're trying to combine it with another table here, another set with only 3 columns. So it's going to say all queries combined using a union, intersect, or except operator must have an equal number of expressions in their target lists. And in previous lectures, I think it was the 8th, when I talked about custom columns and aliases, and we also talked about the null. And so here we can use these concepts, because when we just write it like this, it's like, okay, it doesn't make any sense. But let's say that we don't have that information in this table, and so that is a pretty valid case. We're tasked to, maybe we are going to compare, we're going to union and combine data from different tables, and we have similar data, but we don't have all of the rows, they're not the same, all of the columns from each set. And so, and our boss says, yeah, but we must have this store as a transaction type, but we don't have that here. And so we could do like what we did here. Let's just pretend there now this is actually transaction type that comes from that table, that we didn't put this in manually here. But then we could do it here, and we could say, okay, so all of the sale transactions from this table here are, it's called web. And so we use that and we call it transaction type. And so now we see it's going to concatenate here. So we're going to have store and web. And you see, we need to have the 4th column even here. And we could also, let's say that we didn't have the sales ID field here for a second. Okay, then we could say null as sales ID. And so it's very good to be able to work with null values, because sometimes they can work as a filler if you don't have the actual data, but you need to have the same amount of columns. And so let's say here that we create another column and we say 2021 as, we call it transaction year, for example. Okay, and so we could say sales year, and here we have some corrupted data. We could say 10 as sales year. So now we have this field here is of a string, and this is with a number. So when we combine this, so it's still going to work. However, if we were to say 10.65 here, we can see that we will get an arithmetic overflow error converting varchar to date type numeric. So it cannot convert this data type here to a numeric, but since we have with an integer, we could, SQL Server can convert this value here to a number. So it's going to try its best to, you know, convert the values here. But so that is why I said that we need similar data types, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same. We're going to take a look at the casting and conversion in the next lecture. I just wanted to show you how we can combine and use multiple sets into a single set, because this is actually a very common thing to do. Like you have, let's say that you have set up some linked servers to other databases, and you're going to produce a query, and the final query is you need to combine data, similar data from different tables in different databases, but you still, when you need to do some calculations and queries on them, you still want to produce only one single, one final output table. You don't want to have 3 different output tables. Then you would need to use the union and the union all operators. And so that is it for this lecture, guys. In the next lecture, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about casting and converting values. So converting numbers to strings to numbers, with the numeric and dates and everything, combining strings with dates and stuff like that. So I will see you guys in the next lecture.